Good morning, good dogs. Good morning, sheep. Good morning. Hey everyone, Mark here at the Off-Grid Homestead in the great state of Arizona. Well, I haven't put a video out in a little while. Some of y'all might be who watch this channel regularly might be wondering, where the heck's this dude been? Well, I signed up for a ultra marathon, a 55K, a 34-mile trail race up near Flagstaff. So I've been doing a lot of training for that. A couple months back, I did a little 5K over in Pine, Arizona, and did pretty good at that. So I decided, what the heck, I want to work my way to a 100-mile race. So I've been doing a lot of training, a lot of running every day, plus trying to do stuff around the homestead. But now I'm trying to get back on the videos. But today I'm going to talk about fencing and something you need to know. I mean, this has to be known, and a lot of people don't know it. And this has to do with rules and regulations of building fence around the perimeter of your property, or if you already have existing fence, you need to make sure there's certain specs that need to be made. And I'm sure it varies state to state. Some states may not even have it. But what it boils down to, in this area I'm in, it's free range. Ranchers lease the area, and their cattle can free range through it. So if your property isn't fenced off, these cattle can come right through there. Now, quick story: we have a new rancher that, the original rancher, he retired out here, and a new guy took over. And when he was bringing his cattle through, this was a few months back, I was out back behind my shed here. They didn't see me. There was 4 people on horseback and probably about 50 head of cattle, and they were pushing them towards some water, and they were coming through my property. Well, my dog Xena, she saw them, and she ran towards them, but she stopped. She's about 30 yards from them, sitting on her haunches, barking at them. And them, not knowing I was out there, they were talking amongst themselves about shooting her. So when I heard that, I confronted them. So I just told them, you shoot my dog on my property, we're going to have issues. There's going to be problems. Now, if my dog was attacking one of their cows or something like that, or, that's a different story. But she wasn't. She was sitting on her haunches, just barking at them as they came through. It surprised her because it was the first time they had come through here. And of course, they're on my property, and she's doing her job, right? So had to nip that in the bud. You gotta confront these guys, because they just think they have free range, and they have to. Sure, if they shoot one of your dogs, they have to have evidence that your dog was doing something wrong. So, but there's free range laws, and that's part of it. They can shoot one of your animals if it's attacking one of their cattle or whatever it may be, which I get. That's okay. But threatening a dog when it hadn't done anything wrong, that's a different story on its own property. So anyway, with fencing, and I'm going to show you the specs and tell you the specs here in Arizona. I'm putting a barbed wire fence around this 42 acres, and it's more for my sheep, so I can give them more property to get around, so they can free range on the property a little more. But each strand of barbed wire has to have certain spacing, and it has to go up to a certain height. Okay? And the reason why, if it doesn't, if the rancher, his cattle are coming through here, and they damage my fence, knock it over, do anything to it, if it's not to those specs that's required by the Department of Agriculture, then I have to pay to fix it. But if his cattle damage my fencing and it's to those specs, he has to pay to fix it. Okay? So you have to make sure the spacing of your post and the different, each strand of barbed wire has to be a different height and go up to a certain height. So we're going to go through that. So the first thing we're going to start with is posts. Now, this is open range law in Arizona, and again, it probably varies state to state, so you want to check your local rules and regulations. And it may just be neighbor to neighbor in some states. You know, if you have a garden, maybe you don't have a bunch of property you want to fence in, you have a garden you fenced in. You want to check the rules and regulations on this fencing if there's somebody with livestock in your area. If they tear down your fence, you don't want to have to pay for that again. Make them pay for it. So in Arizona, when you're putting up your posts, they have to be no more than 30 feet apart, within 30 feet. Now these right here, I'm putting about 18 to 20 feet, and then I'm going to put fence stays, but this fence is also going to be hot too. I'm going to put the 4 strands of barbed wire, which are required for to get back compensation, and I'm also going to put 2 strands of hot wire. Now that's going to be not so much for the cattle, but to keep my livestock guardian dogs in. They don't test the fence at all. They're really well trained on hot wire, and I probably wouldn't even need to put hot wire on it, but we're going to do it anyway. So Arizona, no more than 30 feet apart on your fence posts. So on your fence in Arizona, 4 strands of barbed wire. That's required to meet the specs. They need to be from the ground 18, the next strand 28, the next strand 38, and the next strand 50. So if you have your barbed wire, 4 strands of it, in that range, in that spacing range, have your posts no more than 30 feet apart, and cattle or any type of livestock break through it and do any kind of damage on your property, you're entitled to compensation. Dial 1-800. No, you are entitled to compensation. Fencing can be expensive. This is costing thousands of dollars to put this fence around this property here. Not to mention the work doing it. With the caliche, you know, we're having to use a bandsaw and cut the tips of these T-posts to make points, to make them sharp, you know, to try to even halfway get them into the caliche after it gets so far down in certain areas, especially along the power lines here. So fencing is work, and it takes time, you know, especially if you're doing it yourself. You're not hiring out a company. So you want to make sure you follow the open range laws or whatever the fencing laws are in your area, you know. And it's not so much to be, you know, lawful or whatever like that, but it's just to cover yourself, you know, because you never know, you know, if somebody's livestock come tearing through your property and cause damage. You could lose, if you have livestock, somebody's cattle tear down your fencing, you know, that happened here. I could lose my sheep, my guardian dogs, you know, that's a lot of money, not to mention the fencing. So if anything like that happens, I'll get compensated because everything's going to be to specs here. So if you have property and are going to put up fencing, check the open range laws, you know, see what they are, so you can cover your ass. You know what I mean? If you're thinking about buying property, if you're looking at property that already has fencing, know what that stuff is. Bring a tape measure with you. You know what I mean? Make sure that fencing is good to go, so you're covering your ass. You know, things are expensive nowadays. You don't want to have to rebuild a fence, or, you know, or put it up out of specs incorrectly and have to redo it or something like that. So just a little tip I wanted to throw y'all away. I appreciate y'all watching. Like and subscribe to keep up. We'll catch you on the next one.